And ask me what I do, and I say I'm an executive coach, and they say, well, what is that? And I start to explain that, well, I help companies or individuals who are, one thing I do is help companies and individuals who are struggling with getting good leadership, and maybe a company where people are complaining that their boss isn't quite up to stuff in terms of the way they treat people, or they maybe have a difficult customer who they're trying to understand, and they're stuck in terms of a relationship problem. And 2 out of 3 times people say, I need your car. You know, I need to talk to you because that's exactly the kind of problem I'm having. And 1 out of 20, they actually call me and we have a conversation. But it seems to be an area that is growing. I've been in it for about 15 years, executive coaching. And I think that more and more people are appreciating the need for a coach. And I kind of use the example, what we're going to do today. I'm going to give some examples, but my colleagues, Allushuski and Steve Gill, we're going to try to present an overview of coaching. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what executive coaching is. Then I'm going to hand it over to Barb, who's going to talk about how do you go about selecting an executive coach. And Steve and I have asked you not to include us in any kind of tipping of the scale, right? Yeah. So hopefully a more objective viewpoint. And she's been in HR. I'll let you introduce yourself when you come up here, but in HR for 20, 30, 10 years, I don't know, at least 10 years. And she's going to talk about her experiences and again, growing executive coaching, growing a business now in executive coaching. And Steve has been a colleague of mine and a friend for, I don't know, 20 some years. And he's going to talk about how do you assess the impact of coaching. Many of you probably read Steve's blog and know that he does a lot on evaluation. So he can talk about actually how one measures whether the coaching is effective and what the impact is on the individual and the business. So that's going to be the program. We're going to try to keep our remarks relatively brief so that we have a lot of dialogue. I know many of you either have used executive coaches, some of you have used one of us as executive coach, and some of you have perspectives. You can hear from the crowd, we have quite a few people who are doing executive coaching. So hopefully we'll have a pretty lively dialogue. It's going to be put on video by Roger, and Roger is putting all these segments on video, and actually I'm going to work with Roger this year on trying to get them edited down into small bits because you know, like TED Talks are very popular. We have a lot of these talks, which I think could also be quite popular for a local population. So we're going to try to, I don't know if we call it TED Talks, maybe we'll call it Rob Talks or something like that, and put them online. We've got a new gentleman that just walked in. Are you looking for us, or you just walked in?
I'm here. Hi, Rob. How are you doing?
It's Dave Sarn, so you can introduce himself later, but thanks for going around. So let me get into a little bit about what executive coaching has become, what it is. I'll give you 4 categories that I think about for coaching. One category is people come to me and they want help with leadership development. And sometimes it's an individual that wants to just improve themselves. So I work with a woman named Farida. She's not here today, but she's been here, and I think several of you know Farida. And she found me 7 or 8 years ago, and she had a small computer supply company where they supplied computer equipment and software to big companies. And she inherited this role from a family business, so she said, I don't have an executive degree, I don't have an MBA, but I'd like to learn a lot about business. So I've been working with Farida for 7 years, and we've done different things, including coaching her, an advisory board, bringing in other resources for her, to the point now where her company is about 25 people, and they've tripled their revenues in those 7 years. So hopefully this has had something to do with it. So it's kind of guidance for entrepreneurs, people who are trying to develop their business like Molly, and see if you develop your revenues 3 times 0 revenues in 3 years. Yeah, really be there. I think you need to go at a faster clip than that.
A little faster.
Yeah, a little faster. Another kind of leadership training is where people say to me, we have a leader who's not quite up to snuff. Like I mentioned earlier, a boss maybe that's not making it. Usually they're not making it because of some problem in the area of interpersonal skills. And often these are technical geniuses. You probably work with some of these in terms of scientists who have started their own businesses or been promoted to head something, doctor who's been promoted to head a practice, and they get in there and the skill training has been mostly individual achievement, and they really don't understand how do you develop a team, how do you select the right people, how do you give up what you're doing and really lead rather than doing the work yourself. So I've been working with a lot of those people over the years as well, and we have pretty good success in terms of trying to help those people. I would say an area of emotional intelligence is a lot where they have to go. Somebody called me once and said, I need charm school. I heard you do charm school. So I said, well, okay, I'll work on charm school. And another category then is, in that same leadership, is maybe somebody's been promoted to a new role. So, for example, as a person that was head of operations for Blue Care Network, Kevin Klobuchar, who's spoken here before. And Kevin was promoted to executive president, CEO of Blue Care Network, and he worked with me, and we still work together about how do you make that transition from sort of a couple levels down to become the actual CEO of the company. And many CEOs are now using coaches, and I think it's somewhat analogous to sports players using coaches. You see US Open recently with the tennis, and you see in the stands everybody has a coach. I think professional golfers have coaches. And it's becoming more and more common to get coaches. I think Rich, we probably should get you a professional golf coach. The way you're describing your game, I don't know. Yes. But so that's another analogy for this. So a second category is career change. And again, there's several people that have approached me, some in this room. I think, where's Eric? I know Eric. So you're an example, Eric, of somebody who has been in the corporate world, decides that their passion, their skill set might work somewhere else better, and they'd be happier and more effective with using their passion and skill set, but they have to learn how to create revenue doing it. So I work a lot with people who are trying to figure out what to do and how to get better at it. I also work with a lot of people who are in their late 50s up to 70, trying to figure out how do you transition from a very key job, maybe a CEO where you have a lot of responsibility, but it's time to move on, either because of the company wants you to do that, or you know it's time to get out of the way for a junior person to take over, but you don't want to stop working. And you want to keep that passion going, you want to keep that unique talent going, you want to be a contributing member to society, but maybe the money isn't as important anymore. So how do you keep that going? Hopefully you have enough money to maybe not need to do the work that generates the money. So for example, one person, a friend of mine, Dave, who's had a very successful software company, is kind of at that place, he's 71, and also the revenues are down, but they create software, actually they create games for kids with speech difficulties, and they sell it to speech therapists and parents. So Dave's moving to a model where they're going to change their company to more of a not-for-profit model, since they're already there, not-for-profit. Go to that status and give the software away. Give it to parents, give grants to develop it. So it's kind of a creative way to transition, keep doing what he loves to do, keep his team together, but make it so he's got more free time, he can do more of what he likes to do, and relieve the pressures of the day-to-day grind. So those are the kind of the creative solutions that executive coaches work with. A couple of other categories, making tough decisions. Roger Newton, I just wrote an article, it's going to be in Psychotherapy Networker next month, about my transition from executive coaching to executive coaching from clinical psychology. And Roger Newton, Inspiron is one of the first companies I worked with. The tough decision was, Roger was all about culture and people, but he was looking at the burn rate of the money that they had raised and realized that if they didn't cut back on expenses, they were not going to be able to carry through the research that was going to enable them to develop a drug, which in this case was to raise good cholesterol. So Roger had to make a very tough decision, and I was working with him on this about downsizing a company where he had promised everybody that they would be treated right. So how do you make those tough decisions? How do you make them right? He worked very hard to be sure that everybody that was working for him landed on their feet and got another job. But again, that's another area where coaches work. And the last area that I can think of, there's probably several more which Barb will talk about, is crisis management. So often we're called on to go into situations where there is a crisis. Probably, I guess Connie and I, where's Connie? She's down here somewhere. Lost you, Connie. But there you are. But Connie and I got to know each other because we worked together around the September 11th terrorist attack. And I went to New York. I believe you were there for some of that. And we helped companies who had lost people. We helped do preparedness. So that's another role for executive coaches, kind of trauma crisis management. I've also been to Rwanda working on the genocide recovery. And actually my wife Patricia is going back. And Steve, maybe you can talk about this. You're going to join that team this year. Right. And so we've been working there to try to help a crisis using psychological skills to rebuild the people's spirit and rebuild the country. So that's an overview of some of the things that are happening in executive coaching. And I'll be happy to fill in more. I've got hundreds of cases at this point because I've been doing this almost full time since 1998. And Len is here somewhere, Len back here. I've also had an opportunity to work with Len on some companies and also working with MBA students. They go into teams and they're not team players necessarily, right? Multicultural, type A personalities. And they have to become a consulting team and travel all around the world to try to deliver consulting. And they all want to one-up each other. So I've had to work with those teams to try to create a team spirit and a cooperative spirit. So lots of interesting examples, and I'll be happy to share more of that. But I want to turn my baton over to Barb. And Barb, maybe you could do a little bit of introduction of yourself and go from there. So
yeah, sure.
Take over the spotlight here.
I'd be happy to. First of all, I'd kind of like to know more about Steve traveling with your wife. I haven't figured out what that's all about. So you're not on the trip, but...
All right.
All right. Well, my name is Barbara Allushuski, and I have many years in corporate America. So I spent about 10 years with General Motors and did labor relations and negotiations back in the day when there weren't very many women in labor relations, if any, I think, in the 70s. And then spent 10 years in the insurance world at AAA Michigan, and I was a global partner with Mercer on the human resources consulting side, compensation, executive compensation, benefits, and went into consulting. And I first started, most recently, I started my company, and about 15 years ago, I coached for the first time myself personally, and I actually was, working for a consulting firm where I was more on the business development side as a partner. Executive coaching, as Rob said, was just kind of coming around at that time, and I was selling coaching, and the executive said to me, well, we have this woman and she has some issues and so forth, and I said, we have some great coaches, and let me go back and give this some thought and I'll come back to you. And he said, no, I want you to coach her. And I said, well, I don't really do formal executive coaching. He said, well, then the deal's off. Either you coach her or no deal. So I went back and talked with one of my clinical psychologist friends, a coach, and we decided to team up and partner for this female executive. And I found that my corporate background and experience and climbing the ladder for many years in corporate America, combined with the talents of a clinical psychologist, someone much like Rob, was a really nice combination. And from there, started looking more at what is this about assessments and psychology and business coaching, and how do you bring all these wonderful tools together. So Rob asked me to talk a little bit this morning on just how do you select a coach. One, I think references are really great. So you're talking with a friend and you say, do you know anybody that can be an executive coach? That might be the individual reaching out. References are great. It may be a gender issue. It may be a situation, again, like the one I referenced, where it was, a female in corporate America that was struggling with an all-male environment and kind of climbing that corporate ladder, and she really wanted to be coached by an individual that was a female who had been there, done that kind of thing, and who could be a good sounding board and a good role model for her. My company, Blue Heron Talent, individuals come to me, let's say one client where Rob is currently coaching. It's a company where they had a need for 3 executive vice presidents to be coached. They asked me, would I work with them and who could I recommend? And so I work with a lot of independent contractors because coaching is such a very intimate chemistry type of thing. And in this particular situation, she had 3 executive vice presidents, a female CEO, and she wanted them coached by male coaches. Rob, in fact, is coaching, as I mentioned, one of those individuals, and I have 2 other coaches I'm working with. We're just doing great things with these executives. So I want to stop here and ask the audience, when you think of somebody like Alan Mulally at Ford, he has a great coach, and it's pretty damn lonely at the top, so this can be another reason for a coach. Who does Alan talk to? How do you move forward? How do you get the time to go out with a group of CEOs and have these colleagues that you can really discuss what your issues are? Or does your partner understand what's going on? So having a coach can mean a lot of things, if not just a sounding board. And I know many of you in the room have either been mentored or coached by great folks like Steve and Rob, other colleagues of mine, and it's a wonderful experience. So does anybody want to share an experience of how you have perhaps selected a coach? So I mentioned the gender issue. That can be one situation. There's also things like metrics, and what does this coach bring to the table? Is it just going to be sort of some armchair coaching where I can be a good friend to Barb? Or is it really going to be, look, I'd like to have some assessment work. Okay, we do some assessment work on John, and we see that some of the leadership skills that he's really light in are things like delegation skills. I will go into a situation and I will interview your subordinates, I'll interview your boss, I'll interview some peers. I like to do those interviews myself. I have a bias against 360 interviews online. I want to be able to read your body language. I want to be able to have you say, Marie, can you say more about that? And I usually get an awful lot of information by the time I do the 360s, by the time we've done the assessment work, I come back and say to Ed, your people think you're really a micromanager. You don't delegate well, and these are some skills we need to work on. Then we set the course. We talk about how we're going to do that. Right, Rob? We may do books. We may do articles. There will be homework in between the sessions. If myself as the coach, if I'm working harder than the coachee, that's not a successful program, and I may fire you, or you may fire me. So it's just got to work, and there have to be metrics, and that's what Steve is going to talk about. But I really believe in a very sort of regimented process by which we're going to move the needle. And you will understand what that coaching statement of work is. You will understand by the time we get through the assessment work and so forth, what it is that you personally want to work on. And from there, I just say, last point on selection, chemistry really is an overriding issue. It's nice to have the business experience, it's nice to have the academic credentials, it's nice to have the psychological background and understanding. Some good blend of that with a regimented process, homework in between so you really know what those metrics are and what you expect, and then the evaluation process. Any thoughts on that, please?
Yeah, I'm going back to the selection. We selected the coach for our chairman back in New York, and I'd say the criteria were, one, had to be very strong technical background, had to understand the industry quite well. The second thing we looked at very strongly was confidentiality,
Yes.
because if we were in conversations, bring out very sensitive issues.
Absolutely.
Strategically, client issues, you name it. And the third was, not to say that my chairman wasn't a bit mercurial, but incredibly mercurial, was that the coach had to be aware he was going to be probably fired weekly and rehired
Yes.
the following week.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
he had to be willing
Absolutely.
to take that on. And they sort of looked at the chemistry which brought before his.
Those are really good points. And I would say regarding confidentiality, that's a very fine line for the coach to walk. Eric, you've been in HR. You know what happens when there's an HR individual who wants to be a part of that coaching process and kept informed. And, you know, once you violate that confidence, those things have to be clearly spelled out at the very beginning about what will be shared about Barbara and what is between Barbara and her coach. And I really don't think that that belongs in my file or in the HR department. So HR wants to monitor it and ensure, right, that things are moving along to the statement of work and progress is being made, but the confidentiality aspect you bring out is key. And the other thing you mentioned was industry specific. I'm working with 3 different healthcare systems right now, and I will say that with each one of them, the time that I've spent in healthcare, I started off in the automobile industry and all of a sudden in healthcare, but it absolutely is an advantage to understand, do your homework and understand the industry that you're coaching in. One last point, onboarding coaching. I'm going to turn it over to Steve. Onboarding coaching can really help. A lot of work that I've researched relative to executives coming into your business from outside your business, particularly at the C-suite level. About 60% of the time, coming in from the outside, they will derail in the first 18 months. Now, why is that? And by the way, you've used a search firm to bring them aboard. You've spent a lot of money, maybe picked up their house, transferred them, their family, the whole bit. Everybody falls in love. It's a very seductive time, right? We finally got, you know, Bernie to come aboard, and everybody's all excited. Good, Bernie's here now, go to work and get it done. And all of a sudden, nobody's been really clear about what the expectations are for Bernie to hit a home run. So I do onboarding coaching, as does Rob, Steve, where we're looking at what is it that you expect for Bernie to be successful. If I fast forward a year from now, tell me what it looks like. What are some of those metrics so that when you're talking to your best friend and you say, the best hard thing I ever did was hire Bernie, why? What did he do in the first year of his employment? So onboarding coaching can be critical in getting alignment to ensure success for that individual. And when you have a big investment in them, that's something that companies often just lose sight of. You do 360 interviews, you do the assessments, you do this onboarding that brings alignment between what the boss is expecting and the individual, and it can just be huge in helping somebody get off the ground. Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Steve to talk about the metrics and how we evaluate whether or not the coaching really worked.
Right. Thanks, Barb. You know, it's just simple. You just send out a survey and you're done. A little more complicated. And one of the reasons it's more complicated, I'm going to disagree with Rob on something. I don't think it is like sports coaching. And you've just heard the reasons why. If sports coaching is easy to evaluate. Murray just won the U.S. Open. He had a new coach for the first time this past year, Ivan Lendl. It's clear that Lendl was a great coach. Why? Because Murray won the U.S. Open. It's very clear. The goal is clear. The measure is clear. We all understand that. That's sports coaching. But executive coaching is I think, is very different than that. The goal is not clear. I mean, the outcomes are not always clear. The business goals are not always clear. The process is not always clear. You heard about how it can be, you know, personal development. So there's a lot of inquiry and process and self-awareness versus and range to helping, giving advice about hiring and firing and onboarding and so on. So there's a huge range in the kinds of done, what the role of the coach is. So it's hard, it's not as always clear about how you measure those outcomes. So there's, and they're all, it all has organizational interventions too. So what's happening with the organization? Is the coach performing in a way or doing things with their team? I mean, the coachee, the one being coached, doing things with their team, and with hiring and firing, and their own personal development, and their career, that is positive for the organization. So you're trying to find out all of that. And in evaluation, that's what we're trying to find out. Now, I come from a counseling psychology background. I'm a counseling psychologist. Was on the faculty at the University of Michigan for a while, and then went into consulting. I do executive coaching, but where I kind of hang my hats on the evaluation aspect of it, trying to find out if how effective it is for the organization. Does the person being coached change? Do they have an impact on the organization? Does the organization change because of that? There are lots of really important reasons to evaluate coaching, and evaluation kind of is always kind of put to the side. Let's get the coach in place, let's get somebody set up with a coach, and then we'll think about effectiveness if we think about that at all. But what you want to do is, coaching is so expensive, it's a huge investment of money and time, and it should be. It absolutely should be. But right now, it's a $2 billion industry in the U.S. And when you hire a coach, you're spending thousands of dollars to work with the person being coached, maybe tens of thousands of dollars, for good reason. It should be. But if you're investing that kind of money and effort and time in somebody and in yourself, you need to know it has positive outcomes or not. So that's one thing. The other thing, just like you would invest in anything else in your organizations, same with coaching. Another reason to evaluate is to improve the coaching, to get feedback, so that you can continually make sure that you have the right coach with the right person, that they're working together in the right way, that they're having results that are important for the organization. And the third reason to evaluate coaching is that it's reinforcing of learning. By asking the right questions about the coaching experience, you actually help that person being coached learn even more effectively. So we want to be able to do all of that. We want to be accountable for what we're investing. We want to improve the coaching process, and we want to reinforce that coaching process. We do that all by asking good evaluative questions about coaching. Most coaching, and I'll try to be brief here, cut me off if I run over time. Most coaching...
You want us to coach you?
Yeah, most coaching is evaluated. I was kind of being facetious about the survey, but really, that's how most coaching is evaluated. If it's evaluated at all, there's a survey that's sent out to people being coached, or the organization as a whole, and you collect some superficial data. That's okay if you want to find out the extent of the coaching that's going on, and maybe just some overall feelings about whether it was, we feel good about it, we generally feel it was effective, that kind of thing. But that doesn't tell you much about really the impact of the coaching. And I want to read, the way I approach it is most of the time, what you really need to do is create a narrative of what happened, a story. How did the person get involved in coaching? What did they actually do? Because there's a whole range of different kinds of coaching. How did that affect them in that situation at that time with the people they're working with? How did it affect the organization? And what you need to capture all of that to be really clear about what the impact of coaching is. And I want to read, I might just take another couple minutes, and a story. about somebody that, a situation that I was evaluating. A coach would ask me to evaluate his work. And I talked to one of the people that he was coaching. And this is in a development office of the university, which shall go unnamed. And here's what the person said to me. I had one employee who was just not doing as well as he should have. You know, the numbers of visits weren't quite there. The gifts were not coming in over a period of like 18 months. And I had moved his office next door to mine, an overall move of offices, and I was able to hear him on the phone, and I detect that he's not self-confident when he's talking with people on the phone. And if you think about it, why would you give to someone this job who doesn't sound very confident? So I was thinking that I had a lot to do with it. But changing that behavior, helping him to see it was a process, is not easy. So by having some sort of regular check-in where we might talk about 2 or 3 different topics like that, I was able to talk it over with my coach. So quote, okay, here's what I'm going to try in the next few weeks. And then the next call, I was able to say, you know, that worked pretty well, or that didn't work pretty well. So he's saying this to his coach. And with this particular person, now he's talking about the person, his staff person that he's been working with. After a couple of different ways of looking at it, my coach said, maybe in this case, you just need to tell him that he needs to have more confidence in himself. And here's the coachee talking again. And so I did that as he was getting ready to go on one of his trips. And when he came back, he told me about how his trip sounded like a great trip. And then just before he was leaving the office, he said to me, the best thing he said to me was that I should have been more confident in myself. He said, that's really changed how I look at my job. And so there's a clear cut, and so this is the coachee talking about again. And so there's a clear cut case. If I didn't know you could tell someone that, it's a clear cut case that I didn't know you could tell someone that, and I wouldn't have tried that. And now it's made a difference in this young man's life. So this is a short story about somebody who's being coached and their experience working with somebody with their direct report. But what I wanted to try to demonstrate is that you can't find that out in a survey. You can't hear that story in a survey. You've got to interview people. You've got to debrief them on the process and put together the whole picture. And with that, I will stop.
Steve, I wanted to share with you, I try to, when I wrap up with something, I try to use some of Steve's techniques and ask stories about what worked or what didn't work with my coaching. I think it's better to have a third party do it, but it's kind of immediate. So, you know, I'm writing up all the things I do and how I help with strategy and how I help people with their self-confidence and help make tough decisions. So I'm interviewing this guy in Grand Rapids that I just wrapped up with, and he actually works for Amway, which is kind of an interesting thing. And I thought, well, I helped him figure out some things, and I said, well, he said, I really enjoyed the coaching. I said, what would you get the most out of? He said, you know that one time you taught me to meditate? That was the greatest thing. I've been meditating every day. I taught him to meditate? I had no memory of that. And, you know, he said he was stressed. I said, well, try this kind of breathing technique. And we spent maybe 5 minutes, you know, out of 10 hours, I think. And this is the impact. So if you don't ask those things, and this happens to me, I did clinical psychology for 25 years before I got into coaching. And even today I'll run into people at the supermarket or wherever, and they'll say, Roger, you can't hear.
No, there's noise in the background. You're fine.
So I'll run into people, and you know, they'll say, "Oh, you did the greatest thing for me," and I'm thinking, "Yeah, I did the strategic therapy, and I brought these people." And they'll say, "Yeah, you said to me, don't yell at your daughter so much." And then I stopped yelling at my daughter after that, and our relationship was perfect. 30 hours of therapy. But sometimes you just don't really know, and I think that's what. So here's what we'd like to do. We want to get you guys involved in this dialogue, and we also want to do the Connect piece of CEOConnect here. So I'm going to ask you at your tables, and I want folks that are on the outline, like, gentlemen from Algeria and Morocco to join in here. You guys have to learn the American power of networking. Don't sit by yourselves. Join us here. But the idea of talk at your table about your experience with coaching. I know most of the tables have had somebody who's been coached. What worked best? What didn't work best? You know, maybe what was a waste of time? And also maybe a question that you could address. So I'm going to give you about 10 minutes to talk at your tables about your experiences, what worked best, what doesn't work, and then maybe a question or something to share with the group. So you know, these middle tables are good. If you guys maybe at the side tables could join in, and so you have at least 4 people, and you're not with people that you talk with all the time.
What do you mean by a question?
Well, question for the panel. You can come up with a question that you want to ask us about coaching. Then we're going to have the rest of the time really be in a dialogue about executive coaching and questions, sharing best practices, things like that.
Jay, this is Nicole. Yeah, I'm Brad. Jim, Brad, cool. Welcome. Yeah, absolutely. Come on in. Emerson's all right. I'm Brad.
Sorry, can I plug one of them here?
Sure, sit down. Have a seat. Hi.
Hi.
I'm Dave. Nice to meet you.
Jim.
I'm
I'm going to be leaving. Are you ready to go? Oh, you got
nice to meet you.
Members of my
Had his observations so that we met individually. Helped me things that he sees, good and bad.
So he would sit in on meetings that you had with your team.
And that way,
experience that.
It's better with
All right, we're going to open it up. Are there any, anybody want to share a question or a comment? Barb Boulay, come on, Barb. Roger, are you sit here? Yeah, okay. Yeah, stand up so that you can be brought. It's only going out to 10 million people. You look good. You got a little. No.
We talked a lot about when is a coach brought in for remediation and when is the coach brought in for development. And from some of the experiences that we've had, if you're brought in for remediation, there's issues about trust, there's issues about more insecurities, and people have to be open and humble, and yet they feel like their job is on the line. And quite often we've seen that the coach, after the coach leaves, the person does get let go, and so then the coach feels, wow, was I just there to be, you know, pacifying sort of that HR need that, oh, we gave them their last, you know, ditch effort. So our question is to the panel, what's your experience been when the person's volunteered for the coaching versus been forced to have it?
You guys want to tackle that? Go for it.
Go for it. Oh, wow. There can be, I can think of a number of situations, and if the individual, and I'm going to relate to one that you're working on right now, so we'll segue over to you, but so I have a CEO who called me and said, you know, I have a real high potential guy, and he's young, and I think he can run the whole North American operation. But something's going on here. You know, he's just not quite out in front of his business. I'm not quite sure what it is. He's got some young children and so forth and so on, but I'm feeling like, you know, he needs a coach, and we need to help him sort of show up. It's game time. And we talked it through, and we talked about influences in this young man's life. Very high potential guy, but anyway, I said, I got a couple coaches in mind. These are, I think, more fatherly figure for him. And that was sort of this young man really needed someone to look up to, slow down his life, et cetera, et cetera. So, in bringing Rob into this particular situation, they did end up hiring Rob. And I thought that was just a wonderful match. But what I'll say about that is the individual did not seek out coaching. His boss, the CEO, said, this guy has some stuff going on. So we had to meet with the coachee and kind of convince him that, first of all, coaching is a privilege. You know, your company is willing to invest a lot of money and a lot of time in helping you be the best that you can be. So you don't really go to the individual with, hey, you're screwed up, we're going to get you a coach, right? You go to him with, you are awesome. You're doing all these wonderful things. And coaching is a privilege, and we can help you be even more successful. So we've reached out to an executive development firm. They've got some folks that are you interested? I mean, you know, this is sort of an art and science. And I'm going to turn it over to Rob to comment on that, but I'd say that's an individual that they don't want to lose him. Very high potential. The guy doesn't really want to know that he's broke or screwed up or not hitting it, right? So it's very delicate. Go ahead.
But actually, this situation, I've hit the people in the room that have been through this, but a lot of times people will come to me and describe that situation and say, could you coach this person? And I end up coaching the person who came to me about wanting coaching for somebody else. I said, you know, why do you want coaching for this person? And we go through all the reasons, and I said, well, it sounds like you've already made up your mind. So let me coach you on how to actually help this person exit. And people might want to comment, but it's interesting because the executives are often known as like Chainsaw Al, you know, these SOBs that just cut people left and I find it's the opposite. A lot of executives are really conflict avoidant and don't want to let go of somebody because, you know, this person's got 4 children, you know, they're all handicapped, she just, you know, they've been through a divorce, you know, whatever. And how can I possibly let that person go? I mean, that's not actually exaggeration. It's actually a current situation I'm working on. Actually, Tina, you don't know this, but you referred this group to me. But so I'm coaching the executive about, well, how can you find this person's not doing their job? Why are you not doing your job, which is to actually, you know, let that person go? And I have to say, in 20 years of doing this, I've never had somebody who fired somebody, and I'll just use the word fire, that hasn't said, what? Thank you, but why didn't I do this sooner? That's the response I constantly get. Why did I wait? Why did I do this sooner? Because they feel so relieved, and like, you know, Len just told a story where the company then is smoothly operating because there can be people that are just toxic in an organization, and they want to, you know, whether you call them passive aggressive or toxic, whatever, but they're constantly blocking the progress, and they're also making you feel like they're indispensable. So, you know, that's what I try to do, is not take those assignments, but to coach the person who's referring.
One quick comment. When you've got conflict between two people or groups or organizations, and then you're mediating, you need to bring in mediation. Zena Zamet, who's with us today, is one of the foremost experts in mediation. So
In the whole world.
In the whole world.
The galaxy.
I think the galaxy. So if you have questions about mediation, she's the person you can talk to.
So, another group, comment, question? David, focus.
We had a fairly wide-ranging, similar responses, wide-ranging, everybody here is experienced.
David, can you get toward the back here, or come up here and get the question, because we're trying to get this on video. Yeah.
They can hear me in the back. Yeah, we had a wide-ranging conversation like you did regarding coaching. We've had all sorts of different styles of coaching when I first here, all the way from formal coaching in a business career to physical fitness coaching, and some people who want to be what we told us to kick in the ass and just get things done, to more strategic, where we're going, CFO coaching, what are the strategies of the firm. So we went through a whole litany. Where do you go for a coach? How do you find the coach? A legitimate coach? But taking all that,
Our question actually reversed all the way around. We want to know when and if it's appropriate for the coach to fire the client. And have you fired the client. And why you fired the client. Is it beneficial for the client? So that was our question trying to around this.
Yeah, I actually fired a client, and this is a C-suite level individual that I think his reasons for wanting a coach, he reached out for the coach. You're dealing with a board of directors and so forth, so it isn't your kind of supervisor subordinate situation. It's the CEO saying he wanted a coach. And we talked about what he was trying to do, and we went through all of the assessment work, and he had homework to do. And I would go back to see him again. He hadn't done any of the homework that we had talked about from the previous time. And I don't just, hand Rob, the coachee, a book and say, read this, and then in 2 weeks we'll talk about it. Because these people are very busy, and you can't just hand them a book. So when I say he wasn't doing his homework, there would be small things that he was supposed to be doing with his group. And he wasn't doing them. And after repeat sessions, many of these, I said, I really need to refund your money, and because this isn't working. And he said, no, I'm really going to try, but I want to talk about marketing. And I said, but that's not what we signed up to do. So yes, you really have to be honest about, is the relationship working? And we ended up parting. And what happened was, about 9 months later, he came back to me. And we started meeting and having lunch and meeting for breakfast, a cup of coffee, and the coaching took off from there. So I don't know if that's, I fired him. I didn't refund his money. He didn't want his money back. And then we got back into it where he actually started doing what he needed to do to move the needle and manage his board of directors and do the things that he needed to do. But for whatever reason, I had to step up to it and say, this is a waste of my time and clearly yours. And he came back into it. So have you ever?
I was thinking, Dave, I never have. In 20 years, I never fired a, and that's because Barb is a lot more hard type person. So if you wanted to kick in the ass person, you go to Barb. But I think the reason I haven't is kind of maybe it's a Hippocratic oath type thing, but I feel it's my responsibility if I sign on with somebody. It's my problem if it's not succeeding, and I've got to find a way to make it work. So
Maybe your psychologist background.
Yeah, it's my psychologist background.
Just that you work with people.
I'm a healthcare provider, and I really, if I'm running into a problem, I work with people saying, is this working, does it make sense for us to keep going? And like once you get to that, kind of like we're at the bottom, then usually there's some way. Now, I've been fired. That's happened. I've been let go. Sometimes I don't know why I've been let go. One time I got let go, and I thought, man, I'm doing a great job for this company. Why did I get fired? It's because without knowing it, I uncovered that there was an affair going on. And then I said to the boss, I think part of the problem is you're giving a lot of authority to this person who's working in the front office. And the next week I was gone. And the next month, the guy's wife was gone. So that's, step on landmines often. Anybody else? Ready?
Just a follow-up question. So, what changed? So what changed? Did you ask him, why is it going to work this time? But it didn't work last time. Did you ask that question?
Yeah, so the question was, why is it going to work this time when it didn't work last time? I think he got more serious about himself, wanting to actually admit that he had a pretty big ego. And so being confronted with the assessment work, first of all, he had issues with that. That's not really me. So he was sort of in denial. So giving him a lot of this information straightforward, and I do give it pretty straightforward, he didn't like that. And so when things continued to go not well with the board of directors and his relationships, I think he started thinking about, maybe some of the things that Barb brought out, some of the trends that she saw were legitimate. And I know this because he shared with me later that, and we're still very good friends, and we have sort of an informal coaching arrangement that's long after the fact. And so if you're in denial about the data, once you do some assessment work, some 360s, a few surveys, and you ask the client, can you own this? Can you own this data? I mean, that's pretty revealing. And if you're really in denial, and, well, are those valid? That person does, they just have all kinds of excuses. But if they really want to own the data and do something, it just took a while for that to sink in for him. He had to really get his arms around, I'm not being as effective as I am, and maybe I need to own some of this data. So I don't know if you guys want to comment on that, but those are some aha moments. And when you think you're not moving the needle as a coach, right? I mean, Rob has a lot more experience than I, certainly from a clinical standpoint. And we often talk, I have a lot of corporate experience, he has a lot of clinical. It can be a really nice combination. And when you think you're really not moving the needle, you'll have one of those aha moments with your coachee. It's like, oh my gosh, she's getting it. It's so great, isn't it? Can you comment on that?
Well, I think that is a good combination. And a lot of my coaching, Bob, you can attest to this, has to do talking to the leader about their people. I mean, it's almost like help me understand the folks that I'm working with. And a lot of the conversation is around that. So I am using the psychology. But I will bring in, Barb, or I'll bring in Len Middleton, or other people, and we'll do this part where, maybe one person is working on strategy, the corporate structure, but there's something getting in the way of executing on that, and that's where the psychology will come in. So, I do like to partner and bring in people. Steve and I have done some culture work with some companies and organizations where we've gone in and interviewed a lot of people and said, what's the strengths or weaknesses of this culture? And we've had to present that to the CEO, and sometimes that's not very pleasant because they're being confronted with truths that they may not want to hear. Sometimes that's the last we hear from them, and they still don't want to hear it. They put it in their folder and move on.
Yeah, and I would just add to that in terms of the partnering, because it's a little bit of art and science here. You're using different, it may be readings, it may be selected individuals that complement the work that you're doing. But you're wanting to go back to that coaching statement of work. What does the individual want to accomplish? A corporate chief operating officer I'm working with, she, I'll give a shout out to Deborah. Deborah is working with me, with this individual. We're working on some business things, and all of a sudden this coaching has gone into, what do I want my life to be 3 years from now? And she's into a little bit of the spiritual arena. She's very successful. We worked on all the things she was working on in her corporate life, but she's really wanting to sort of find herself at age 51. And Deborah has a process of visioning, and I brought Deborah into this engagement. It's fascinating. It just went to another place from the business coaching that can be so rewarding for an individual. Think about the privilege of having a coach. You get to be with your coach for an hour and a half and just think about you. In our busy lives, how many of us really get somebody that's gonna just show up and want to hear all about Brad? Spent an hour and a half with just Deborah. It's pretty great, isn't it, Rob? Steve?
Yeah, it's very rewarding.
And maybe the first time anybody has really listened to that person. Really, truly listen. And I think the hiring and firing of a coach process happens maybe not in actuality, but in the person's mind a lot, because if the coaching is in focuses on self-awareness and self-development, the more you get into that, the scarier it can be for some people. It's not therapy, but still that asks you to reveal things about yourself, and that can be scary. And a person can go through a process of wanting to get out of that relationship with the coach, and then realize that no, they really need that, and so want to get back into it. So it ebbs and flows, and that, I think that's what you're experiencing.
Let me ask you a little poll here. How many of you are in the coaching business? Let me try that again. How many of you are in the coaching business? Why are not all of you in the coaching business? How many of you spent time coaching this week? How many spent time coaching in the last 3 months? I would argue that executives, people, and I realize here we have some people started, but all of your jobs are coaching. I mean, a lot of what you're being paid to do is develop your people and have that kind of conversation that Steve was talking about. Not telling people what to do, but getting into how do you motivate them, how do you get them to do the best they can do, is to use the old Army ad, be the best you can be. And actually Ken Dallafor, who's the Executive Vice President of Blue Cross in charge of sales and marketing, is going to be a speaker in November here. And he's next Detroit Lion. I don't know if he was there with the good days, probably not. He's not that old.
When were those?
Yeah. If you're old enough to remember the Lions' good days, you're probably dead. But the point that Ken makes is that that's his job, is coaching. And I asked him who his greatest coach was, and he said it was a special teams coach. It wasn't the head coach, and he's been on many great championship teams in college, and he was on other teams in the NFL. But he said it was a special teams coach because that coach took the time to really get to know him and work with him. And so I think that we all want to be wanted. We all want to be gotten. Somebody said the best thing they got from the coaching group that I did was the sense that they got. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, when I got there, people got me, they understood me, and we all, crave for that. So I think everybody has to think about your job as coaching. I mean, Jay, you're with a young, new account executive. Your job has to be to help that person be good, be better than you. I mean, that's what we all want, is people who are working to become better than us and exceed. So I think it's not only about getting coached about yourself, but it's getting coached how to coach. That's a really important thing. We haven't heard anything from this table. Scott, Molly, anything you guys want to share?
There was a, let me repeat a question that did come out of this table, and that was, is there a way to evaluate coaching, if I can, help me if I don't rephrase it right, but evaluate coaching without bringing in an external and doing a formal kind of evaluation process? Does that characterize it pretty well? And I think there is. I mean, the hard part is the confidentiality aspect of it. So if there is a person or an organization, and I'm not necessarily HR, it could be a different part of the organization, individuals are part of the organization that are very trusted individuals and can assure confidentiality, and you as CEO can assure confidentiality. I think that person or organization can ask the questions and follow up on the coaching to see what the impact of it was. So I think you can do it that way. But I think, and you can do a short, you can do a survey to just kind of find out general reactions. That's not going to tell you a lot. But to capture the stories, I think you can have a trusted internal person that can ask those questions.
Jake?
As a small business owner, what kind of as a small business owner, what kind of investment should I expect to make in acquiring
money?
Yeah.
My engagements, typically for me, I'll say it's probably about a $5,000 to $7,000 investment. To feel like you have enough time with the coach to actually get to know yourself. So I think that's probably the range. A lot of people want to coach on an hourly basis. I don't like that because then you always have to make the decision. It's like going back to your trainer, do I really need that coach this week, or do I save the $200 or the $75? So I try to say, if you're going to invest, put a chunk of money on it, and the prices range. You can probably find somebody does what I do for $1,000, you can pay $25,000. But I think that's probably a range that somebody in a small business would have to think about. One of the other, yes, one more, and then we're going to have to wrap.
Okay. Well, one of the things that we talked about is how do you, speaking of money, how do you bring this coaching to people earlier in their career and people who work in nonprofits? so that they do maybe less damage on the way up. So that if they have some challenges, they help to solve them before it gets to a crisis sort of level.
Let me ask maybe Brad and Stephanie to talk about that, because we're experimenting with some models now of, we call it Emerging Leaders Connect, and we bring together Brad, and how many people are in that group in this room? Just a few. Rich, Brad, yeah. And what we try to do is use a mentoring model. So we come together once a month as a group, but Rich or Brad, maybe Brad, you can talk about what are you doing with the mentoring on that?
Sure. Well,
Because mentoring and coaching often are pretty closely aligned.
well, yeah, and what we've found is that within this community, in Ann Arbor especially, there are a lot of young professionals, 25 to 35 to 40, that have had some success earlier in their career and feel like they're at the point where they can offer something to a person that's 23, coming out of college, getting started in their profession. There are a lot of people that want to do mentoring, and what we've had a problem doing is finding the mentees, because it's obviously a very special relationship that you have to have with a person to connect with them. And so what we've been trying to do is mentor ourselves to come up with, all right, how do we connect with young people to help them to understand that, we've gone through some of the trials and tribulations that they're about to go through, and we can help, and we think we can learn from them as far as some of the energy that they have coming into their careers and that sort of thing. So we look at it as definitely a two-way street, and it has been a challenge to connect with some of those people, but I guess to more directly answer your question, I think that maybe it's not an executive coaching engagement, but maybe it's a successful kind of 35-year-old person in the community that you can connect that person with, and it may not be a $5,000 to $7,000 engagement. It may just be community service or something that the mentor is looking to get into and understand a little bit more about.
And I think that kind of tiered model, like maybe you don't need to talk to somebody who's at the tail end of their career, but the next level, and that person can coach and help develop. And so that we're trying to create this kind of tiered mentoring, coaching. And Plant Moran built, Herman has been here before. At Plant Moran, everybody's part of a 3-person mentoring team. And they use including partners, and when a person joins the firm, they're part of that team. And it's kind of like not people that are reporting you necessarily, but somebody else. That's a big company, but I think that building the mentoring industry really helped. There's also people in the community, and I can think of at least 3 people in this room that are really open to being helpful. One is Marvin, or for a lot of people, Marvin, David, and Glenn. And I'm not recommending them because they're probably overloaded at this point. I know they are, but they're just helpful people. And when somebody's trying to figure something out, like with the university or with the entrepreneurial world, you can go to these folks and they're really open. Zena's another person that just gives their time away to try to help. And I think if we did more of that, it would really be great in our culture to just give away. And you've been looking for a mentor, and maybe you can talk about your experience, what you're trying to get from that, to rise to the next level of your career.
Yeah, and I think it's tough. It's tough when you're in a job and you are working hard, but you're not quite getting all the training that you want. So I think it's good to sometimes go outside of your own company and look for other people that have shared those similar experiences as kind of Brad was talking about.
You found somebody right there, right?
Right, yeah, exactly. So I've done some stuff with Gary, and I'm constantly, I think more the merrier, really. So I think it's good to talk to people that have been there before and figure out some other things outside of what you're doing in your work to kind of grow as a.
You're mentoring dance. Can you talk about it from your point of view and what that does for you?
Well, with a lot of confidentiality.
Okay, I'm sorry, just we're trying to for the camera.
I'm happy to. So I don't want to talk about dance specifically. No. But
go talk about dance specifically.
Father wants to know.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting when you talk. Most of the formal coaching that I do is in Fortune 500 land that's related to our business at Root. So it's very different when you're talking to a CEO or someone in the C-suite of an organization and someone who's just starting out. People like Dan, who are the next generation of leaders who are working in startup organizations that don't have a formal development system, are this, I think, probably underserved group of people that don't have somebody in their work that they can go to regularly. So Dan and other people in that situation that I informally coach, not part of my work at Root, for me, it's been a great experience in just being able to say, yep, I've been there at that age or at that stage. I've been in a small organization, such as when I joined Root when we were much smaller, where you say, I've got to figure this out on my own. And it's been those type of experiences for me make a great, it makes probably a bigger impact on me than the coachee, because you're able to think back and say, what did I need at that time, and how scared or lonely or confused that I feel, and is there something that I can offer based on that experience to help? So it's part coaching, and I think it's part storytelling and sharing and affirmation. Yep, been there before, understand that. Here are some tips and tools that might be helpful. So I think it's a little bit different than coaching and mentoring is a little different because
they're pretty closely aligned.
They're closely aligned. I think the mentoring piece is allows you to relate a lot more as an individual to say, been there, here's some stories that can reassure you that you're not alone in that.
Glenn, can you comment on that from the point of view of the university? Because I know you get stimulated a lot. You get MBA and BBA students, and you do a lot of mentoring and coaching with them. What does that do for you?
Well, I work a lot these days because I can't get anything done in my office. The students wanting help. And it's been great to watch this, and Margaret can attest to this too. Over the last, say, 5 years, the entrepreneurship piece is really starting to take off with the students, to the point that we got to probably solve something right now. There's not enough of us to help with all the ideas that are starting to finally flow out of the community here, and which is a good problem, right? So, no, it's a lot of fun. You watch them. It's like watching kids grow up, right? You watch a company grow and blossom. It's fun to see that they work through the challenges.
And you also get opportunities. I mean, I've coached people, I'm not going to department, and then, I've started like with Molly, and then I hear about the businesses, and before I know it, they're really onto something. You can make money on it. You can be involved in the beginning of it, and actually, I don't usually invest in companies that I'm coaching. It's too stupid to do that. I would have probably made a lot of money if I'd done it. But I mean, as it grows, you might do something for free, and then next thing you know, you've got an engagement about it. So this whole idea of giving things away and getting back, I mean, I don't do it for that purpose, but it often happens. Bart?
Oh, Scott? I was just going to comment on peer-to-peer coaching. If any of you have read the book, What Got You Here Won't Get You There, Marshall Goldsmith. Okay, so in there he talks about, and again, this is an individual that coached Alan Mulally, back to that story at Ford, but he's a coach, but he has a coach, and his good friend coaches him, and the two of them, because he's on the road 200 days a year or whatever, he's in hotels, so he knows all the things that he needs to kind of hold himself accountable to that he should be doing. So his list goes like this. It's, did I tell my wife I loved her today? Did I tell the kids I loved them? Did I do any writing today? Because he's writing another book. How many push-ups did I do this morning? How much alcohol did I have? You get to your hotel room, you go to the bar and get a drink, go up to your room. How much channel surfing did I do today? How much time did I spend on the internet? So whatever, he's got about 10 things that he knows he has to kind of hold himself in check. And his friend has a similar list, and they call each other every day at the end of the day as best they can. And the idea is that they ask each other the list. So you're not allowed to be opinionated about it, but it's sort of peer-to-peer coaching. So if I shared with Stephanie, these are the things I got to watch out for. These are my derailers. And Stephanie called me at the end of the day and just sort of, did you do these things today? That can be a very effective way. Also, you're not spending a lot of money, but you trust the individual. Of course, they tell you to shy away from your spouse, your partner, etc., because they're going to be opinionated about that. Did you? Can't have an opinion. You just have to hold one another accountable to that sort of peer-to-peer coaching.
And also, don't tell too many people that you love them that day.
I have one other point on with the Emerging Leaders group. One of the things that we found as a group is when you were talking about peer-to-peer coaching or that next level of emerging leaders, is a pay it forward model. So if you have had someone within your career that has been a mentor to you, find someone else to mentor and pay it forward and continue to do that so that you can teach someone else how to get to the next level, and then again, pay it forward, so that there's always this model of the younger leaders knowing that they have this other group who is not necessarily the group that is, you know, in the succession planning stage of their career, but is still kind of up and coming, but at the next level, so that they have someone they feel like they can go to and hopefully keep them on the right track throughout their career so that they don't make too big of a mess on the way. So we can encourage everyone within the group to do that and to pay it forward. And hopefully those people that we're mentoring will then again pay it forward later on, and so it continues and expands.
Stephanie, could you also mention the report card we send out? Barb was talking about the accountability every Friday, and if you want to be on this, you can be, but it's for my clients right now. But can you talk about what we do?
Yeah, we just send out, it's a really brief report card. It's just to give yourself some grades on a couple key areas. Did you make progress on your big project for the week? I can't remember all of them.
Did you mentor your people or coach your people?
Did you coach your people? How well did you do in your family life and those people who you have responsibilities to for as far as relationships? That could be your spouse or, you know, friends or children, coworkers, things like that. And then there's a couple other components.
Yeah, I think one was what's your next week?
And what's
big
your
goal for next
big goal for next week? And it's just a quick email, and you can feel free to email it back to us, and we can take a look at it. Or it's just accountability for yourself. You can fill it out for yourself, or just even do it mentally. But I think it helps a lot if you write down those answers. Even if you just email it back to yourself, and the only one you're accountable to is yourself. It really helps to actually write it down and actually answer those questions. It really reveals a lot of things about yourself that you maybe.
So if you want to be on that list, let me know. And also, I'm going to put out I'm publishing a paper on executive coaching that will be on in the magazine Psychotherapy Network next month. So if you want a copy, a link to that, I can send it to you. And it covers some of the material, but also talks about my own transition from executive psychology to executive coaching. By the way, I had a lot of people who mentored me on that. One of whom was Bob Quinn, who's many of you have heard speak. And Bob was my coach to help me become an executive coach. So, and then I was able to help Bob with some of his kids in their coaching. So, I mean, it's like that give back, you know, that we keep passing it on. I want to just mention what's coming up. We've got next month is a really exciting program about the Healthcare Reform Act, and particularly how it's here in Michigan, in Washtenaw County. Bob Gunzel, who you may know as the county commissioner, head of the county for many years. Norm Herbert, who's on the board of United and was the financial head of Michigan for a long while. And Bob Laverty, who was the head of St. Joe's. And Marianne Udo, I think, is going to speak about what's going on, and very exciting how we're actually implementing healthcare reform. In November, Ken Dallafor is speaking. We have commitment for the spring from Mary Sue Coleman to speak. It's tentative right now for April, is it? April, but we're going to get confirmation on the date. Daron Levin, who's been bureau chief for Wall Street Journal and the Times, is going to speak about managing your reputation. Do you remember who that is?
January.
Yeah, and do you remember else who I'm missing? Those are some of the highlights for the
Zingerman partners.
Oh yeah, some of the folks who are the Zingerman partners. So we hear from the Zingerman's heads, but these are the people that run the coffee business or the candy business, the bakehouse, are going to talk about that model of being an active partner, a managing partner at Zingerman. Oh, and then anybody hear of the Sarnes guy? Sarnes family. You know these guys, Dave? Dick Sarnes and David's brother, Steve Sarnes, are going to present about the New Step story, and it's a great startup story about a medical device that helps people stay fit, including people that have all kind of challenging conditions, almost anything, MS, cerebral palsy, Parkinson's. People still use this machine to stay fit. So They're on, what Dave's on, let's see, what's your dad on, like this second big business at this point. He's 85 and still an active CEO, so they're going to be presenting. So we're going to have a really interesting program. Any connections? Anybody want to meet anybody in the room? I'm going to connect people. Len and Scott, you guys should talk. Okay? Who else should talk to each other? Zena, people should talk to them. If I got any conflict situations at work. Who's in the active job search in the room? Anybody raise your hand high? Okay, so anybody got opportunities for jobs, talk, sales? Are you selling anything that anybody want to sell to anybody in the room? Rich, you're selling sales training. Marvin, you're selling pieces of the university, right?
Events. Accept donations.
Jay, you're branding, is mainly what you're doing? Branding,
Brand strategy and marketing communications, correct.
And Len, are you guys looking for companies to work with at the university at this point? I mean, are there any of the programs that are putting teams out for?
Sure, we do about 300 project teams a year, so we're always looking for.
Okay, so Molly, I want you to talk to Lynn about your startup because I think it would be great to get some students working with you guys. Roger?
Yeah, there's always A2 New Tech every month, the third Tuesday of every month. We just started holding it at the new law school, South Hall, the new law school classroom, which is really nice. And I also help with Detroit New Tech, which is also has 5 young companies come in once a month.
And Eric, you're going to be putting on events, so if anybody's going to get married, put on a corporate event. How about divorces? Do you do events? I think that's an underserved population. You know, we don't do enough to.
Good idea.
That divorce is finally final. Yes. Have an event around it.
There's one more. There's Ignite Ann Arbor #7 is October 25th, Thursday night. Also at the Blau Auditorium at the Business School. It's free. The Ignite format is 20 slides automatically advancing every 15 seconds, so it's a 5-minute talk. We have 16 of them, all kinds of different subjects. Very exciting to get ideas churning in the community.
Are you still looking for speakers for that, Roger? Or?
No, we just selected them yesterday.
Anybody else? Anything that you guys want to? Yes.
Lunch Ann Arbor Marketing is a forum. We meet every Wednesday at Connor O'Neill's, 11:30 to 1 o'clock. It's free, and we bring in speakers to talk about marketing, business, and sales. So, come on.
All right, well, I think we got to wrap up. Please feel free. Mandy's, I want to give Mandy a hand here. She's our greatest server in the world. I come in just sometimes, I don't even order. I said, I want just some Mandy time. I go into her. All right.
Nice meeting you. Nice talking with you. Steve.